You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.
I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a Wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Arbor, Unger, Picker, Plager, Rad, McDonald, Shock, Hall, Chris Moore, Patey, Harvey, Jimmy, Robert, Saberin, Berenson, Thompson, Eggers, Hess, Roberto, Pierre-Plant, Jacques Plant, Gossip, Merrick, Vince, Urbano, Stevenson, Davidson, St. Marseille, McCreary, Leftley, Ecclestone, Huck, Palisari, Talbot, Keenan, Stanley, Yassi. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues.
Hello and welcome to Bluenotes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the West, your home for the Blues and the home of Torey Krug. And if you're still clueless, we're talking about St. Louis. I am one half of your host here, Tom Franklin, joined as always by my partner in crime, Wags. Wags, how's it going, bud?
I'm coming down off the ledge. Friday night I was up there and I was like, uh-oh, but I'm coming down from the ledge. I'm starting to come around on things and just hoping that we're going to have a good year next year.
By the way, just a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here. So Wags, about 5 minutes before recording here, was on the Eads Bridge, about ready to jump off of it. So we've saved him. You're okay. You're going to be fine. You're not going to cannonball into the Mississippi River. Not today, anyway. So
no.
I wouldn't advise that for anyone, actually. It kind of hurts. So first of all, first things first, we have a lot of free agency stuff to talk about, guys. I mean, this is what this episode's going to be about today. Before we get going here, I want to give a quick congratulations to the winner of our Bluenotes question of the week. Winning a cloth mask, a Bluenotes cloth mask, which I don't have one around me, so I can't turn it upside down this time. But I want to give a shout out to at Windmill NV, the Vegas Blues fan on Twitter. Ironic that we're talking about Vegas and the Blues on this podcast, but congratulations, and we'll have a new question for you here after the show. This is a live show, by the way. This isn't pre-taped like we did before. We want to take your comments. You can, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Periscope, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, and I can flash them up on the screen, and we can talk about it as well. 314-329-4349, 314-329-4349 is our Google Voice number. You can call it. You can text it 24/7. And have your voice be heard on Bluenotes as well. We do have a couple of calls that we will be running as the conversation goes on here, but let's go ahead and get right to it. So, a lot's happened the last 3 days. We're not even talking about the NHL draft. I mean, that happened too, and we'll talk about that on the backside of this podcast here. So, definitely not as newsworthy as it's been the last couple days. So, Wags, you and I were on local high school football duty in two different places, and you were the first to inform me of the Torey Krug signing, which I did not see coming at all. I mean, there had been some hockey experts that had speculated that might be a possibility, but maybe it was just me not coming to grips with the fact that the Alex Pietrangelo era was coming to an end. And so when I see Torey Krug, you telling me that Torey Krug is signed, stunned. 7 years, $45.5 million, which, by the way, I had to do a double take on because that's exactly the contract that Justin Falk got. A $6.5 million average annual value, also Justin Falk. No trade clause, also Justin Falk. I'm sure that's not a coincidence. And by the way, very interesting to note here with the Torey Krug deal. Doug Armstrong, quoted by the Athletics' Jeremy Rutherford. We're learning more about Doug Armstrong's idiosyncrasies when it comes to contract negotiations here. He doesn't like signing bonuses. He doesn't like, and apparently he doesn't like no movement clauses. He says that no player should have more power than the owner. And that's what he feels a no movement clause does, because basically, like for instance, in Tampa, they waived Tyler Johnson, who has 4 years, $20 million left on his deal. He has a no trade clause, but he could still be waived. In a no movement clause, he can't even be waived. I mean, so I can't blame Armstrong for that. I mean, you're pretty much there's a few players in the league that I feel kind of hold their teams hostage because of a no movement clause. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Continuing on, so that's not the only thing that happened. In the days that followed, the Blues signed former Flames goaltender John Gillies, I think that's how you say his name, to a two-way deal. At one time, I think he was being considered as the heir apparent in Calgary after Kiprusoff. I don't think it quite worked out for him, though. The Blues signed former Panthers and Devils defenseman Steven Santini to a two-way deal. A bit of depth, of course. The Blues lost Derek Pouliot, so let's pour one out for our wayward defenseman there. Hopefully he's back on his feet. Looks like he is back on his feet, literally. So that's good. And former LA Kings tough guy Kyle Clifford signs on Sunday, today, if you're watching, to a 2-year, $2 million deal. So we'll talk about that as well. And then, of course, as I'm preparing all of that, getting everything set up for this episode here, the moment that Blues fans have been dreading happened. Golden Knights will, according to a report, will sign Alex Pietrangelo to a 7-year, $57.75 million deal worth an average of $8.25 million average annual value. Don't know what the no movement clause situation is. Don't know what the signing bonus situation as of this recording yet, which will play heavily, whenever you're comparing this to the Doug Armstrong conversations, about Pietrangelo and what he feels about, signing bonuses and whatnot. So we'll see what Vegas actually put into this deal. They gave him like a big 2-day tour of Vegas. Presumably Petro's still there, probably to sign the contract. And also Vegas is apparently on the verge of trading Nate Schmidt. He had been rumored to go to Winnipeg earlier in the day, but he's being sent to Florida, reportedly, according to Andy Strickland, to make some salary cap space and some roster space for Alex Pietrangelo. So we got some good, we got some bad here. Let's get to the good first. Torey Krug, your reaction whenever you saw the news.
I was kind of like you. I was shocked because, once again, no one really saw that coming. In fact, if you listen to the interviews with Torey Krug, he didn't even see it coming. His agent was like, there's always going to be a team that comes out of the blue, no pun intended, to strike you with an offer that you can't refuse in a sense. And when the Blues did that, he jumped on it, which I don't blame him. That's 7 years security, $45 million, $6.5 per year. I mean, that's not bad. The greatest thing, though, was that reaction from Robert Thomas, who got obliterated in game 1 of the finals, where he basically tweeted out that picture and said, are we best friends now? And then Krug responded with the stepbrothers, yep. So I like the fact that, he's embracing it. And yes, it's a Bruin, but he's going to help the power play. And that's what people need to understand. And, they're going to look at it and say, oh, well, Justin Falk was supposed to help the power play as well. Torey Krug is legitimately going to help the power play. And really, he's going to help solidify the pairings. Him and Falk are going to be together. It's a left and a right. So Falk's not playing on his offhand, and they can be the second defensive pairing. You've got Scandella and Parayko as a defensive pairing. They stick together, and you pray that Scandella reverts back to his form in the regular season. And then you got that third pairing of, Gunnarsson, Bortuzzo, Perunovic, Mikola, all those guys. So it really kind of solidifies. He's not coming in here to replace Alex Pietrangelo. He's just taking his spot. I'll just put it that way. So I'm okay with it. You knew it was coming, I think, when Petro didn't sign before, but I'm okay with it right now. That's why I'm had time to think about it.
Showing a comment right now from my friend Tim, who you'll hear later on. He called the Bluenotes fan line earlier. Schmidt not going to Florida now, per David Pagnotta. He's being traded, just not to Florida. So thanks for jumping in on that. It's kind of hard to podcast and follow Twitter at the same time. Which, by the way, Wags, like, have you I use TweetDeck, so like, have you noticed if you use TweetDeck or even just regular Twitter, it kind of looks like the Matrix the last couple of days. Like you're staring into the screen with the dripping, green text coming down the screen. It kind of looks like that lately for me.
Oh yeah, basically it's the end of times. I mean, that's
It feels
what it
like
comes down to.
Yeah, so we're all going to be, eating bland oatmeal type substance food in the future. So,
Wait, you don't eat bland oatmeal types of food?
I work in radio, so I mean, my oatmeal has some flavor. I can afford a little bit of flavor in my oatmeal. Even some MSG, which ramen's always cheap.
It's
Ramen is
true.
always cheap. It's ultimate cheap food. So, all right, we have definitely got this podcast off track. Let's get it back on track here. Torey Krug. So, my first reaction it was shock. I mean, because it to me, and I think a lot of Blues fans, it signaled the end of the Alex Pietrangelo era. Now, Armstrong said afterwards that he wasn't done with Petro, that maybe there still could be something worked out. So that has led to a lot of speculation as to, okay, how do you make a Pietrangelo and a Torey Krug signing happen? Blues fans were like ready to trade Bozak. They're ready to trade Falk. Of course, they're always ready to trade Falk, so that's nothing new. They're maybe talking about Jaden Schwartz being moved. Actually, I admittedly I brought that up as a possibility, and I was ready to spend this podcast episode if Pietrangelo had not come to terms with Vegas yet, talking about, okay, how do we get Pietrangelo in now that Krug's here, and the fact that Pietrangelo has signed with Vegas kind of it puts that to rest. And it kind of, looking back on it, it was kind of silly. Just because the Blues would have had to have, I mean, just trading Bozak would not have gotten the job done. They would have had to have traded Bozak and another salary. And it's just, that would have been a hard sell. You're still dealing with players here. And no GM likes to call a player and say, hey, you're going to Buffalo. Let's face it. And no player wants to go to Buffalo except Taylor Hall, apparently. But we'll talk about that a little later on here. But back to Krug. Another thought that I had, Wags, was this. It really did feel like Doug Armstrong was trying to jump in front of the situation with Pietrangelo, thinking that, maybe after a year of negotiations and, really not a lot of progress being made, maybe he saw the writing on the wall with Torey Krug. And he decided to go out and get Krug, instead of waiting for Pietrangelo, because it looked like Pietrangelo was ready to wait this out for a while. And, no GM wants a player, just as, Doug Armstrong said, no player should have more power than the owner. At the same time, I don't think he wanted Pietrangelo to hold the Blues hostage while he waited on his future. So, to me, it felt like that, he was getting Krug, just to, say, hey, we may not have Petro, but we still have an all-star defenseman, Wags.
They didn't want to lose out. That was the thing, because Torey Krug was the next guy after Pietrangelo. And after Toronto signed guys and the teams that were looking for Pietrangelo, and I was just talking about this with another person a little while ago, they're like, why are we saying that Petro essentially got screwed? Because, the offer for 7 years, $8.25 million, if that's the case, yes, there's no salary tax or, salary or not a luxury tax, sales tax in Vegas. So yeah, the Blues would have had to come in probably around 8.4, 8.5 to essentially match what Vegas is giving him. And they probably would have. So in essence, Petro's agent kind of screwed him out of more money and a legacy in St. Louis. Whereas now he'll kind of be looked at as, he brought the cup here, but he didn't finish his career here. And if I'm Pietrangelo, I'm actually kind of upset at my agent because, the teams that wanted him, Toronto, Florida, those teams went out and signed cheaper options because of the way the salary cap is going to be for the next few years. And they just didn't look at that. And they didn't take what they had in front of them and kind of make some concessions and maybe move some things around. Because Doug Armstrong even said, I believe, that he did put a small no movement clause in there for the last few years of that contract to basically say, hey, look, you get to 36, 37, 38, you're not going anywhere. So it's not a full contract. And yes, maybe he gets traded at age 35 the year before it kicks in, but the last few years he would have had that comfort of knowing he wasn't going anywhere. So I think, he's going to put on the face and the smile and say, I'm happy to be in Vegas, but he's probably back there seething going, why did I not fire my agent?
Yeah, he's got to be at least a little upset at Newport, for how they handled this. It felt like Newport was ready to go into this offseason, even knowing the situation with the COVID cap of 81.5 mil and teams, not having, as much money to work with as they would have. I mean, we're talking about $5-6 million that teams were pretty much robbed of because of this damn pandemic. So it felt like Newport was ready to go into this offseason and use Pietrangelo as an example and say, okay, we're going to play chicken here with the COVID cap here. Someone is going to give Pietrangelo his money. Whether it's the team he wants to be on or not, someone will get Pietrangelo what he wants. And to me, as time went on, it kind of felt like that maybe Pietrangelo was overplaying his hand. I don't think I'm with you, Wags. I don't think he truly wanted to leave St. Louis. I mean, but at the same time, there was a part of him that I could tell he wanted to, this was his last chance at a big contract. He wanted to get paid. And I can't blame him for that. He's got kids now. He's got a Stanley Cup. He gave the St. Louis Blues so much in his career. I mean, he was the captain. He was a tremendous player. And he was a great leader. He was a great player to have. He did turn 30 though. And, I can understand the, unwillingness to give him a long-term deal with that much money when you have like the Duncan Keiths and the Brent Seabrooks and, I think San Jose has like 4 contracts that, they're kind of like defensemen playing up until their 40s. It's ridiculous. So I don't blame Armstrong for being prudent there. I do kind of wonder though, 8.25 mil per, that's not far off from where Armstrong and Pietrangelo were at. I mean, do you feel, Wags, that this is something that could have been tied up earlier and we wouldn't even be having this conversation?
Yeah, most definitely. And, honestly, until the official announcement and his signature goes on that contract, I'm not totally closing the door on the Blues coming back in and say, hey, whoa, you want 8.5? Okay, we'll give you 8.5. I mean, because the market's now been set for him. It's come out. That's the only contract offer he's been offered outside of the Blues one. So if Petro was smart, I would say he might want to circle back to the Blues and say, hey, look, this is what it is. Now, Vegas may not give him that option, but at the very least, I'd leave that door cracked. And as far as him getting deeper into the contract with the age, you bring up Keith and Seabrook and the guys in San Jose. The big difference for me with Pietrangelo is he's not the rough and tumble defenseman that a Keith, a Seabrook, and those guys in San Jose are. He is a guy that has avoided major injury for the most part. He has had some injury issues, but nothing consistent, nothing long term. He's a guy that doesn't put himself in a position to be hit, and he is very, very fit. So I'm not as opposed to that long-term contract. So like I said, I always compare him to Nicholas Lidstrom in a sense. I mean, I don't think anybody can be as good as Nick Lidstrom. And that hurts saying that because he's a Red Wing. But he has that same sort of mindset and same sort of mold that Lidstrom has. And Lidstrom played until he was about 40 or so. So I wouldn't have been opposed to that long-term deal. But I do understand the thought process behind what they were trying to do.
If you're watching on Facebook and Twitter or on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment. We'll bring it on screen, and we'll gladly talk about it here. We also have our Bluenotes fan line, 314-329-4349. And we did have my friend Tim call in once again here. And I do want to warn you before you call into the Bluenotes fan line, make sure you're in a quiet area, and you'll see why here with Tim's first attempt.
Hey, so I am happy with the Krug signing. That was, a good deal. I mean, just came out of nowhere also, which is awesome. But, I like it because it keeps. Stop. Please don't play this one. Ignore this one. I'll try it again when the dog's not barking.
So
wow, so you still played it?
I still played it. Yeah, I had to. if you've ever met his dog, it's a big like what it's a big white like sheep herding dog that like barks at everything. I just thought it was funny. I thought it was funny, and he also named it Yori. Back when Laterra was still
Well, it's
decent.
ironic that it's a white as snow kind of dog, right?
Yeah. I'm sure he's heard that once or twice, probably from me. So he did go ahead and redo his phone call. Let's go ahead and play it here. There is no dog in this one. I promise you.
All right, let me try this again now. All right, so I like the Krug signing because it came out of nowhere, number one, but also leaves to where the Blues aren't left flat-footed if Petro does in fact leave, which I think he will. Obviously, I think he's going to wind up becoming the first captain of Vegas history, Vegas Golden Knights history. Also, in the off chance that he actually does come back, it would also give them the potential to have a true shutdown number one defending pair, which they haven't had in a long time, probably since Pronger and McKinnis were together. As far as Pietrangelo, I'm not mad at either side. I mean, if I was going to be mad at anybody, it would be Pietrangelo because he overplayed his hand. I'm not mad at Armstrong because he covered himself. It's not like he's just shut the door either on him. He just wasn't going to sit there and wait around and be strung along. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad he has a plan. It's nice to have a GM that has a plan like that. I mean, no matter what happens with Pietrangelo, if he goes to Vegas, good luck there. I mean, it looks like it'd be a good fit. So it is what it is.
There we are. Okay. I think I left a little extra there at the end. But yeah, Tim without the dog. Thanks for that. By the way, he called before the Vegas news came down, by the way. And and about his dog, as you can see here, he's a psycho. And I can verify that. When I go to his house, like, Yuri hates me. I can't be around that dog. He sees me and it's like the Kill Bill sirens go off. It's not good. So yeah, he has to hide when I'm there. But regardless, enough about Yori the dog. He did bring up a point, though, in that, it sounds like maybe, Torey Krug is definitely more of an offensive type as, we'll bring up Jay Fresh's analytics here once again. You can see his strength right there is on the offensive side. Not terrible on defense. You can ask Robert Thomas that. But he's definitely, an offensive-minded guy. And when I look at his analytics here, Wags, I can't help but think that of what a Torey Krug, Colton Parayko pairing could do on that top pairing. You think that's where they go?
I'd like to say yes on that, but I still think it comes down. It's going to be Krug and Falk, I think, to start things off. I think they probably will both play off of each other very, very well. It'll take a little bit of the pressure off of Falk is in addition. So I think that's probably the direction they're going to go. But yeah, honestly, if your top power play unit has Krug and Parayko on it, that is where you want it. And then you can throw Falk on that second power play unit, and all of a sudden you've got two deadly units out there if they, use Tarasenko the right way when he comes back. But that's a whole nother story. So yeah, I think it's going to go Krug and Falk to start. I think at some point you probably do see Krug and Parayko get together. It really comes down to how guys like Marcos Scandella play, what Scotty Perunovich shows as well, because he's going to be a factor. McCullough as well. I think those are the guys that are really going to have to step up and show what they have to really solidify this defensive core.
And one thing we talked about with Jay Fresh last week was Vince Dunn. While he's an analytics darling, he has really avoided a lot of top competition. He's been kind of buried on that third pairing. And, you want to talk about a Torey Krug type of a player. I mean, here's Vince Dunn. So, is it time, do you think, for Vince Dunn to step it up this year?
If he's in St. Louis, that's
if he is.
Thing. I'm still of the mindset. I mean, especially after all these signings, yes, the two-way deals, affect the salary cap a little bit differently. But I still think Dunn is a guy that might be sacrificed on this team. And it's sad to say, because if you can have Krug, Parayko, Falk, Dunn as, four of your defensemen, you've got a lot of offensive capabilities. And if we haven't seen enough what offensive defensemen can do for teams, that right there will give you nightmares if you're an opposing team, because it's like Krug said when he was with talking about playing the Blues in the finals. It's like the next line comes over and they got a plan and they go. Then the next line comes over and you're just sitting there going, wow, I got to play against this. Now I got to play against that. Now I got to play against this. If you can start rolling that kind of stuff defensively as well, yikes. And they're going to need to score because they kind of sacrificed a little bit when it comes to the goaltending situation.
Yeah, they did. It's going to be interesting to see how Ville Husso does, in his real first crack at the NHL. I mean, he had kind of an up-down year with AHL, actually really last couple of years, but scouts are insistent that he's ready to go. So I guess we'll find out in a bit whether, Husso's ready to go or if we'll see John Gillies up in the pros. We'll take a look at that. By the way, the Blues currently sit at about, according to Cap Friendly, their current cap hit is $82,675,000, which would be about $1.1 million above, where the cap is right now. So fitting Vince Dunn onto this team, now you're still talking about moving like a Tyler Bozak or someone out to accommodate him. Now you can be 10% above the salary cap during the offseason. So theoretically, the Blues would still have roughly about $7 million to play with during the offseason. And then they got to figure out, how they get back under, at the beginning of the season. And one of those ways that they might do that, and this plays into the Kyle Clifford signing today. Kyle Clifford is a fourth line left wing grinder. Now, who else is a fourth line left wing grinder for the Blues? Alex Steen. And here's what we know about Alex Steen right now. He's got 1 year left, $5.75 million. We also know that he got hurt during the playoffs. And I haven't really found anything as far as to exactly what the nature of the injury is. The fact they're keeping it kind of quiet, though, is a bit troublesome. And there's some speculation I've seen on Twitter that Steen is not expected to play this coming year. He is going to go on LTIR, and then there's your $5.75 million savings right there, I guess, or at least a good portion of that. So to me, it feels like Steen. We may have seen the last of him as a Blue. What do you feel?
Yeah, I think it is the case. I mean, especially because you're not going to have a whole lot of suitors for trading a guy like Tyler Bozak. You're not going to be trading a Jaden Schwartz, I don't believe, either. So they've got to find a way to make up some of that money. And Steen's done everything that you possibly could ask him to do in a Blues uniform. And it's just going to be one more thing that they're going to ask him to do. But I think he's okay with that. I think he'll sit back and go, okay, look, I can rehab and just go at my own pace, make sure I'm healthy. I'm getting paid, and I can retire a Blue. It's one of those things that maybe at the end of the year they allow. I don't know how LTIR works exactly, but maybe there's a chance that he could come off of it for a game, take a lap, and let the crowd, hopefully that is there, show the appreciation that we should have for an Alexander Steen.
Yeah, and don't forget also Tarasenko will probably go on LTIR as well. So there's another big chunk of money that would theoretically be available. By the way, you mentioned the Rob Tom tweet at Torey Krug. Did we just become best friends? Do you think Binnington will return the favor to Kyle Clifford?
I think so. I mean, he's a teammate now. I think the Blues put out something just recently about that as well, where it's like they're going to have a laugh about it, and then it'll be down to business, and we'll go from there. And that's the great thing about hockey, in a sense. You are bitter rivals when you're playing against each other, but when you become a part of a team, that team for the most part is going to welcome you. I mean, there's a couple of instances where you go, yeah, this guy is not going to work, but for the most part they understand it's hard-nosed hockey, and these guys are going out there and giving their all. So yeah, I think that might be a little good-natured ribbing. Maybe a puck gets a little high on Clifford or a stick or something like that in a practice, but outside of that, he's part of the team now, so they're going to embrace him.
That's kind of the beauty about hockey is that, not only, and of course, we're talking about an incident that happened early on in the season. I was actually there for that game, with the Kings and Blues. And
Tarasenko injury, too.
Yeah, that was also the Tarasenko injury game. But you had, Clifford bumping into Binnington, and then Barbashev and Sundqvist kind of showed him the door, if you will, and, pinned him up against the boards. And then Barbashev later dropped the gloves against Clifford. But the beauty about hockey is that, you're just as likely to see those four, Binnington, Barbashev, Sundqvist, and Clifford at the bar having a drink. That's the thing about hockey. That's the brotherhood of hockey right there, and that's what I love about hockey. I mean, they'll bury the hatchet. I think you're absolutely right. Just as I'm sure Torey Krug is going to do something nice for Robert Thomas. At least he should. Otherwise, trade him right frickin' now. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We just signed him. We don't.
I don't know if you could actually do that. I think there's a grace period where you have to like keep the guy on the roster if you just signed him.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. So, well, yeah, we'll see. I'm sure cooler heads will definitely prevail on that. So, couple other bibs and bobs here. First of all, before we go on to like the other NHL news, what do you see the Blues doing now in the offseason from here on out, if anything?
I don't see if there is anything that they can do. I mean, like you said, the LTIR situation is going to free up some money, but I don't think they're really going to mess around with that. I think they're done and set with this team going forward. Because if you do anything else, you're putting yourself right up against the cap again. And having a guy like Tarasenko coming off LTIR at some point, you're going to have to account for that money. So yeah, I just don't see, especially now that Taylor Hall's off the market, I don't see anybody else that you could theoretically go after and make your team better without hurting your team. So yeah, I don't think there's anything that's going to happen between now and opening night, and hopefully opening night's coming here a little bit sooner than we hope.
The only thing I see happening, you kind of mentioned, this may be it for Dunn as well, is if Dunn gets traded, and my friend Tim thinks it makes sense to move Dunn for a forward. But what if we went back to Gabriel Foley's idea, when he was on Bluenotes, where Dunn is used as a sweetener to get rid of like a Tyler Bozak? I mean, what if Tyler Bozak and Vince Dunn are traded for either picks or another forward? I mean, to me, it would depend on the forward, but that's about the only thing big I can see.
Yeah, that would be it, because like you said, he's, Dunn isn't signed right now, so he's not a part of this team, and he's going to have to get a contract some way or the other. Whether it's here or not, we'll see. Just taking a look at the Canadiens roster of guys who you might bring in. I mean, they just brought in Josh Anderson. I don't think you're bringing in Thomas Tatar or Brendan Gallagher. Philip Deneau, maybe. Joel Armia's on there at $2.6 million. He's a right winger. That might be an intriguing option. Outside of that, they're not trading any of their younger guys. So I don't know who you would get. I think the picks would be better. And if they can find a way to offload that money and not necessarily spend it right now, but keep themselves in the running for a trade at the deadline, that might be the best way to go. I mean, go with what you've got right now. See what you have in these young kids. I mean, we talked about this a lot with the Cardinals when we went into this season with the outfielders. Maybe you got to see what some of these young kids got, like a Klim Kostin and a Jordan Kyrou in game action situations. So maybe Dunn and Bozak go away, but they don't really do much with that money until the deadline, and maybe go after him, get a high impact guy.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And so let's take a look around, just around the league here last couple of days. And for me, one of the teams that I was really looking at this offseason, as far as a team that can make some big signings, make a big impact, and make the Blues' lives a living hell, not that they already do, is the Colorado Avalanche. And so far, they re-signed Andre Burakovsky, 2 years, $4.9 million per. He was a real breakout guy for them. And then they decided to get him and Kadri a line mate in Brandon Saad from the Chicago Blackhawks. It was Saad and Dennis Gilbert, a depth defenseman, in exchange for defenseman Nicholas Zadorov and another defenseman whose name escapes me right now. But basically, the big thing was it was basically Saad for Zadorov. Chicago retains $1 million. Saad has 1 year left. Saad's a guy that analytics, and again, I'm learning the analytics side of things here, but I saw one report, I think it may have been from Jay Fresh himself, that suggested that Saad is one of the best offensive, zone generators in the entire game. He just, for some reason, his teammates won't score. I think the reason is because he plays for the Blackhawks. So that's, that could be the reason. But to me, Brandon Saad with the Avalanche, with a Nazem Kadri and Andre Burakovsky next to him, that top six for the Avalanche frightens the hell out of me. And I think Brandon Saad is going to have a real big bounce back year in Colorado.
What'd we ever do to you, Chicago? I mean, come on. Like, why? What did we ever do to you? But I agree 100%. Him going to Colorado just makes them deadlier offensively. The thing that still is up in the air for me with Colorado is still the goaltending. I mean, you've got, you saw what happened in the bubble. They had a good start, and then it all kind of fell apart due to injuries, and they really didn't go out and get anybody. I mean, you had a bevy of goaltenders that you could have gone out there. I mean, Henrik Lundqvist, Braden Holtby, Jacob Markstrom. I mean, all those guys, Matt Murray in a trade possibly could have been somebody that you brought in, because that team is legitimately a solid goaltender away from being one of the most deadly teams in the NHL.
And then on the flip side of that, apparently the core of the Chicago Blackhawks are very upset with the move so far. And I saw a report that they're pretty much at the point where it's like enough is enough, because not only did they trade away Brendan Saad for, the statue that is Nikita Zadorov, if you talk to our friends at the Offside by a Mile, but also, they lost Crawford.
Yep.
Their longtime goalie, Corey Crawford's gone. They traded away Robin Leonard. They have done very little to, fill those gaps, which I know just breaks your heart, Wags. That fact that the Blackhawks are probably looking at another year of suffering. I mean,
darn. Honestly, I was actually a little bit pining for Corey Crawford here in St. Louis to back up Binnington. I really thought it would have been a great addition, and given Binnington someone that can push him, but also give the Blues a fallback option if Binnington is not who we think he could be.
Yeah, absolutely. That would have been an interesting option right there. And I'm kind of glad to see Chicago kind of dismantling like this. They also traded Ali Mata away to Los Angeles. I'm kind of glad to see it, if nothing else, because they were still a 12 seed in the playoffs, and they still looked kind of dangerous. And they were kind of a team that's like, you have the Brinkets getting better. They have Kubalik, who is a really good player. Kirby Doc's ready to go for them. Nylander's getting better. They still have Dylan Strome, who's a restricted free agent, but he should be back. And Bachfist is ready to go. So it looked like they were a couple moves away from, maybe getting back into that contendership discussion, and instead they're stripping away, their cores. So
that's bad contracts for you.
Yeah, bad contracts, and it gives you some tough decisions. Which again, going back to Pietrangelo, if you have an Alexander Pietrangelo at age 37, you're not getting rid of that contract, obviously, and you're not going to trade a team legend at that point. So, more money, more problems. As they say, as the old rap song goes, more money, more problems.
The old rap song. Oh my gosh.
Oh my, yeah. I think I was probably like 7 when that song came out.
Right there with you.
That's how old I am. Yeah. So, other interesting wheelings and dealings in the offseason. Taylor Hall, a guy that I thought maybe Colorado would be interested in. Apparently, there were discussions between Hall and the Avalanche. Didn't go anywhere, apparently. Taylor Hall, for all that he has said during his time in Arizona about wanting to play for a contender, goes to Buffalo. Buffalo.
Maybe he likes the wings.
Good wings up there. I can verify that. I've been to Buffalo once, and Anchor Bar, fantastic. But 1 year, $8 million. We don't know if there's a no trade or anything like that.
Actually, I was on Cap Friendly. It looks like he has a no trade and a no movement clause.
Then I don't understand, because this, to me, this would be the type of a signing for Buffalo where you maybe flip him at the deadline, because you're not going to making a cup run next year in Buffalo. Hello, you're Buffalo. It's not happening. But is this a surprise of the offseason that Taylor Hall is going to Buffalo?
Yeah, it definitely is a surprise. But once again, it just goes back and shows you what this flat cap is going to do over the next couple of years. It's going to really push a lot of these guys to look at this long and hard and go, maybe I do a 1 or 2 year bridge deal and then get my full one once we kind of get back to normal. But and I see this from Tim. He actually just put it up here. Having the no trade, no movement clause gives Hall full control at the trade deadline. And that's exactly the point I was going to make. You talk about, Buffalo being able to get a Hall and trade him at the deadline. Well, Taylor Hall is making $8 million regardless. And if it comes to the point where Buffalo's out of it, he can pick and choose who he goes to. Yes, Buffalo's going to get a good deal out of it in some way, shape, or form, but he's going to be able to pick where he goes. So whatever team he feels has the best chance of the teams that make offers to Buffalo, he's going to get to basically pick and choose where he gets to go and make his Stanley Cup run.
That's true, but as Doug Armstrong warned, Taylor Hall now has more power than Terry Pegula.
And does Terry Pegula actually have any control in Buffalo? I mean,
no. Ask any Buffalo Sabres fan. He has no control whatsoever. It's sad. It really is a sad situation.
Yeah.
And I guess with Taylor Hall, I mean, he's guaranteed he's gonna be playing, like, if he's not in the first line, at least top 6. I mean, but he's probably gotta be a first line.
Oh yeah, him and Eichel. That should be interesting.
So if some of the talk going into this offseason was Taylor Hall signing a short-term deal to kind of rebuild his, stock a little bit, maybe this is the place to do it, because he's going to get all the top-line minutes in the world in Buffalo. So stick taps to them, I guess. And finally, stick taps to our friend, Oakville native. Well, I guess he's a friend of everyone in St. Louis after what he did in the Stanley Cup run. I don't know him personally. But Pat Maroon.
Not yet.
Pat Maroon finally gets his 2-year deal. He stays in Tampa, $900,000 the next 2 seasons. I was beaming after he signed that deal because, I know he's been wanting, some security in his career. It seemed like that he really fit in well in Tampa. They won a cup. He gets an assist, in the clinching game as well. And just his appearance on Spit and Chicklets was great, by the way. If you have a chance to listen to that, he was there on their last Monday's episode. Just he was still recovering from all the Stanley Cup, drinking that he was doing, the day after, and his voice was kind of raspy a little bit. But it's great. Pat Maroon's a legend, and I'm so happy that Pat Maroon got his deal, even though it's not in St. Louis. He's in a place where he seems to be happy, and that's good.
Well, you also have to remember when the Blues signed him, they were the only team that was even going to offer him a contract, and they didn't even do that until late. I mean, it was a late offer when it came in for Pat Maroon the year they won the Cup. So to go from basically having only one team interested in you, and really they were questioning even that, to now going back-to-back, and now you've got your 2-year deal. Yeah, he didn't get a raise, but now he's got 2 more years of security. Congratulations, Pat. And if you're listening, come on and tell us about what's going on with this contract. What are you doing with your money?
And airfare from St. Louis to Tampa is pretty cheap. So, you can fly Allegiant for $40 one way. It's not too bad of a deal at all. By the way, we have not talked about the NHL draft here at all. So we're going to do that when we come back. We're going to pay some bills first, tell you about another one of our podcasts, the Bolts Broadcast Podcast. Pay some bills with Manscaped, and then when we come back, we're gonna go to the beach, Wags.
Ooh, yeah.
We are gonna take a trip to the beach with our good friend, the Hawaii Blues fan, and he's got something to say about Jake Neighbors and the St. Louis Blues draft as a whole. So we're gonna do that right after we pay some bills, right here on Bluenotes.
This episode of the Bluenotes podcast is sponsored by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-belt grooming, offering precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Got a crazy bush? If you trim your hedges, your tree stands taller. Have you ever wished she was smoother down there? She probably has too. If you're anything like me, and or just not a neurosurgeon with a steady hand, you probably neglect below the belt. Manscaped has us covered. Millions of balls are about to be nick-free thanks to Manscaped's advanced skin-safe technology. Manscaping accidents are finally a thing of the past. Whew! One of the coolest features is the LED light, which illuminates growing areas for closer and more precise trimming. That's insane! If you're listening to me speak right now, you're one of the first people to hear about this life-changing product, and I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code THPN at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. Get 20% off and free shipping again with promo code THPN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code THPN. The best in men's below-the-belt grooming.
Do you want a true champion's perspective? Well, come on over to the Bolts broadcast, where we talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, have some friendly banter, and of course, hockey name of the day.
If you pronounce it, you can get it.
Anthony Nunschwander.
You didn't pronounce it right. That's Anthony
Nunschwander.
It's N-E-U-E-N. It's Neuenschwander. Anthony Neuenschwander.
Dude, I always slept in German class, so I don't know how you expected me to put that together. Come on.
You only took it for 4 years.
I took it for 2.
Took it for 2 years? Oh no, J-Do
Yeah.
took it that long.
I took it for 2 years and was like asleep in all of German too.
Oh, you only took it in junior high. You didn't take it in high school at all.
No. Yeah, she sent us across the hallway, and it was like me and, I don't know, 5 other people, and all we did was just goof off because it was an empty room of just us while she was too busy yelling at you guys because you guys were a terrible class.
No, we weren't terrible class. A couple people were terrible people. I'm not going to mention names. Not going to call out anybody in this pod. It was
Chase
not
Crawshaw.
me. It was 100% not me.
Oh boy, I know a couple of those names, but yeah, it's a good point, Chase. We won't mention those here. New episodes every Monday, only on the Hockey Podcast Network.
Aloha! I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the Bluenote Fan Report, and this is my Aloha commentary. Bluenote podcast fans, as you can see, I'm doing one of the most dangerous things out there. I have my back to a very active and wild ocean. What do I think is the most dangerous thing? Well, for me, one of the most dangerous things is having to draft in the first round of the NHL in the middle to lower parts of the round. Doug Armstrong just found that out and decided to go all Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and start singing "Wouldn't You Like to Be My Neighbor?" Has he picked number 26, Jake Neighbors. The consensus on him is out. NBC had him at number 31. Others had him from 40 to 75. It might be a slight reach, and it may be 3 or 4 years before we see Mr. Neighbors wearing the Blue Note. At number 2, in the 3rd round, he had 2 pickups, Peterson and Loof. In the 4th round, he picked up Tanner Dixon. In the 5th round, he picked up Matthew Kessel. In the 7th round, he picked up Noah Beck. The reason I mention those 2 is someone close to the Blues told me that those might be the 2 best pickups, and you probably will see them in a Blue Note sooner rather than later. Next, 24 hours or so later, comes free agency. And on the first day of free agency, all the goalies, or at least the majority of them, went everywhere but St. Louis. Except one. A WHLer from Calgary who's had nothing but a cup of coffee, Mr. Gillis. He signed to a 2-way. I think he's just protection. He's nothing more than a WHL, OHL goalie. We'll see what happens. I think will be in the AHL now. Then he makes the splash of the day. He goes out and gets his defenseman, but not the defenseman we all thought. Late in the day, when no one expected it, and yes, I'm trying not to wipe out, just like Doug Armstrong is, he signs Torey Krug to a 6-year, $45 million contract, or 7-year, $45 million contract, with an average value of $6.5 million a year. And, you know, this is a tough competitor. He's small, he's fast, he's offensive-minded. I think he's going to change the Blues up a little bit. A lot of people are thinking that he should pair with Parayko. I don't. I think he should pair with either Falk or Scandella, and let Parayko pair with the other one, give that good left-right going, and see what happens there is you have 2 really good defensemen in your top 2 pairings. I think it will help the Blues. He made 2 signings on day 2, but they were so ho-hum, I don't even remember who they were. One from Dallas and one from Minnesota, and one that had played with Minnesota, I think. They're 2-way contracts. They'll be in the minors. You know, there's still a lot to happen. Doug still has a chance to really wow us. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was a trade happening sometime this week. A major trade. This wouldn't be surprised at all. One of the last things to say is that I know that the Blues were very, very high on Reichel and had talked to him. Unfortunately, Chicago got in there and stole him from us. I thought we should have moved up and got our guy, but we didn't. Maybe nothing was there. Well, guys, as you can see, the sun is rising, the waves are coming in, and it's time for me to enjoy a little bit of Hawaii. So this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying aloha, mahalo. Please subscribe to my YouTube page and to the Bluenotes podcast. Aloha! I will see you on the next Bluenote Fan Report.
All right, let me just say, first of all, intensely jealous
Yes.
Hawaii Blues fan. That is a beautiful looking beach. That water's got to be absolutely just, it just looks like the perfect temperature. I don't know if it is or not, but it just looks like it. And, you know, I want to give some stick taps, first of all, to Mrs. Hawaii Blues fan who shot that video. Guy wanted to make sure I gave that shout out. Thank you very much. And I cannot wait, Wags, because he's going from place to place to place now. I can't wait for him to do his aloha commentary from atop the volcano.
We're working up there, I think. I think
We're-
I think the top of the volcano is on the way.
We're getting there. We are absolutely getting there. So, want to thank the Hawaii Blues fan for that, of course. He brings up Jake Neighbors, and you know, he kind of echoes a lot of what analysts have been saying about Jake Neighbors since the draft. I like the pick personally. He profiles very well as a Blues type of a player. But our friend of the program, Gabriel Foley, did a NHL draft recap on stlouisgametime.com, and he kind of joins the calls of people who are kind of skeptical about him. His reader, he noted that Neighbors kind of came out of left field for him, but he does say, and I quote here, Neighbors is the pinnacle build of a grinder. He's Berube's dream player, really. He has a level of aggression physically and work ethic that was unmatched in this draft class. But what takes it to the next level is his skating. Neighbors' speed and agility is absolutely terrific, effectively upgrading him from a simple pest to a top-9 grinder. Neighbors doesn't have the scoring upside of some of his contemporaries, but his grit and grind is unprecedented this year. Neighbors should develop into a very reliable third-line grinder for the Blues, helping provide the same level of aggression that won the Blues the Cup 2 seasons ago. So I agree with his assessment on Neighbors, you know, and just the type of player he is. You know, watching some video of his, he's very quick. He's very fast. He can beat defenders. He can just run over defenders if he wanted to as well. And he does have some decent stick handling from what I've seen. I mean, he put in a couple nice beauty breakaways in some of the videos that I saw. Does he have like elite, scoring talent? I didn't really see that too much. And the thing that I think people take note of is the fact that he only profiles as like a middle six type of a forward. And some people were wondering, well, why didn't you draft someone else that had higher upside? Because there were a couple players that, may have had higher ceilings than him. I feel like Neighbors was pretty low risk. He seems like a low risk guy. He seems like that he'll at least be able to match expectations. I like his moxie. He seems like a good character guy. And I agree with Gabriel in that he just feels like a St. Louis Blues type of a player and a kind of a guy that could be a fan favorite for years to come. It's just that, no, he doesn't profile as a top end guy. I like the pick because, again, he profiles as a Blues guy. But do you agree with people that think that maybe the Blues should have rolled the dice on someone else that maybe had a higher ceiling but also had more bust potential? Or do you like the Neighbors pick?
I like the Neighbors pick if it was in the second round.
Yeah.
The fact, and yes, it was a late first round pick, so late first round picks sometimes are reaches, but like Foley said in the past, this is probably one of the greatest NHL draft class we're going to have since the 1980s. So the fact that you are reaching in the first round, in a sense, for a guy that, yes, does fit your profile, but who's to say that in 3 or 4 years that profile has changed because Craig Berube isn't here and the style of the Blues changes. So, I like the pick if it would have been in the second round. I think I would have been happy one of two ways. I would have been happy if they would have picked a more high impact player in the first round. But honestly, I would have been more happy if they would have traded that pick back. Because if they were looking at a guy that was projected to be in the second round, why not go out there and maybe collect a pick or two for that first round pick and allow a team to get up there? Because the team didn't have a second round pick, and there were guys going in the second round that were first round talent. So that was the thing that really kind of got to me, was that it didn't seem like there was any effort to move that pick. And I'm wondering if that's partially because Bill Armstrong's not there. And, the whole draft strategy was essentially, like you said, to be safe. So they went with the safe option. So I don't know. It's going to be 3 or 4 years down the road. We're going to be looking at it and going, okay, that was a great move. Or it's like, what did we do?
Yeah, exactly. So I have high hopes that he'll be a Blue. He'll be wearing the Bluenote at some point. It's just I'm tempering my expectations with him. In the WHL, by the way, in 2019-20, he played 64 games, scored 23 goals, had 47 assists for 70 points. So not bad numbers, but in the WHL, it's a very score-happy league. So you're expecting higher numbers, obviously, than what Neighbors provided. But we'll see what happens with him. Now, Gabriel Foley in the third round, he feels the Blues got a steal here with Dylan Peterson, the center. You look at his stats, 2019-20 in the U.S. Developmental Program. He played 45 games, 8 goals, 17 assists for 25 points. Okay. And, of course, the Blues now have a second-round pick because of the Marco Scandella trade. But Gabriel Foley feels that Peterson is a second-round talent. And here's his write-up on Peterson, quote, "The 6'4" centerman has sky-high potential." Like the sounds of that. While his skating and shot need definite work, his strength, defense, and, size are all terrific attributes. He has the potential to develop into the next David Backes for the Blues. You like to see that from a third-round pick. Establishing a great net front playmaking presence. He's Tage Thompson 2.0, but this time around the Blues spent a third-round pick instead of a first-rounder. Tage was a first-rounder, obviously. For Peterson, the sky is the limit. If all goes well, he could develop into a serious second-line center for the Blues. While his scoring will likely always be a downside, his benefits he brings on the defense and with his strength are going to be well worth the pick. So the way he kind of makes it out to be here, Wags, we might be looking at a potential Selke candidate here, like another Rick Mahar.
I'll take that every day of the week. And he also makes note of the fact that he's a net front playmaker, size, strength, leadership, all things that, if you watch the Blues for the last couple of years, outside of the year that Maroon was here, they didn't really have that outside or that net front presence that really distracts goalies and mucks and grinds and gets the trash kind of goals. Well, here you got a guy that profiles like David Backes, who did that as one of the best in the Blues uniform in that case. And yeah, it might take a couple years for him to get here, but just to have that guy on that trajectory and possibly be that guy, you put him there on the second line. You got Robert Thomas up there on that first line. It could be a very, very scary situation here in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And their next pick in the third round, we were talking about how the forward cabinet was a bit bare. They go with a left-handed defenseman here in Leo Luff. I guess that's how you say his name. He's got 2 umlauts over the O's, but I think it's Luff is how you say it. He played in the Super Elite League. He played 43 games, 2 goals, 13 assists for 15 points. Gabriel considers him a very interesting pick at 88th overall. And here's his synopsis, quote, "Digging into it, this might have been a 200 IQ pick. Luff is not a high-scoring talent. He's not a Norris Trophy winner, but he's so incredibly reliable. During the 2018-19 season, Luff was named the best defenseman in Sweden's under-18 league, despite only scoring 9 points in 16 games. But his well-rounded, reliable play clearly drew the eye of the league. He's a smooth skating defenseman with great hands and good passing. He's also got good size, standing at 6'1". While he likely won't ever reel in a top line role, he will definitely develop into a reliable bottom four option for St. Louis. A good comparable would be fellow Swedish Blue Carl Gunnarsson. Both players play a smooth, reliable two-way style of play. When the 33-year-old Gunnarsson finally hangs up his skates, Luft will be there to fill his shoes. That's high praise. Already saying that a third round pick is going to be there to fill a bottom four role for the Blues. Gabriel has a lot of confidence in Luft, and if he is comparable to Gunnarsson, he'll probably play a game that maybe you don't notice too much, but it's just very reliable and very workmanlike, and I'll take that from a third rounder.
Yeah, not every defenseman is going to be a superstar number one defenseman that goes out there and lays the big hit or scores the big goals or anything like that. Sometimes you just need a smooth, steady, generic, I don't want to say generic, but a generic defenseman, a guy that goes out there, does his job, not flash or anything like that, just like you said, workmanlike. And that's what I've loved about Carl Gunnarsson. I know people give him trouble all the time because he's not a guy that's noticeable on the ice. But in my mind, if you're not noticeable on the ice, it means you're not making many mistakes. And if Luft is the same way, that's great, because then you've got 4, 5, 6 more years of at least one guy that's very, very steady.
Absolutely. And so we had a general theme here in this draft so far, and that is, kind of, maybe lower ceiling type of a players, but players that are very reliable and, kind of defensive minded. For the fourth round, Armstrong deviated from that, as Gabriel Foley notes out here. He says, quote, "A lot of people aren't fond of him at 118th overall, but he could pan out as a total steal. Maybe." Dickinson didn't play very much in the 2019-20 season. He was held back on the Sioux Greyhounds roster that was very set in their lineup, so his opportunities to improve may not have been the same as some others. But when Dickinson did play, he was explosive. His shot needs work, his passing could improve, and his defense might need a boost, but he is fast. Damn, is he fast. He also has a strong enough hockey IQ and vision enough to make him a worthwhile pick in the fourth round. So when you're getting to this point of the draft here, Wags, you're talking about, you're pretty much at lottery ticket mode here. Sammy Blais was a 6th round pick. He was a kind of a deep dive for the Blues scouting department. But if you look at like the Blues roster, for instance, you'll see a lot of first rounders, a lot of second rounders, not a whole lot beyond, from the third round and beyond. And that's kind of reflective of the entire NHL. Scouts do a really good job nowadays finding the top talent. And, every now and then there'll be someone like a Blade that slips under the radar here. Tanner Dickinson, to me, just based on Gabriel's analysis, seems like a under the radar guy. He was held back by his own, junior team. But in the times that he played, he looked very good, which, could bode well if the Blues give him a lot of time. But Wags, he sounds like a guy that would probably need a little bit of time.
Oh, yeah. He's got at least 3 or 4 years of development still need to go. If you're still working on your shot and your passing, you're not seeing the NHL anytime soon. But I do like the fact that he's a guy that you could look at one day and say, wow, where did he come from? That's a boom or bust, essentially, in this instance. And while in a deep draft, making a 4th round pick on a boom or bust is kind of controversial, I can't necessarily fault the Blues in that, because they need to take some risks here and look at guys that could be high-end potential if they pan out. So I'm okay with it. I'm not over the moon for him, though.
Yeah. And then a couple more defensemen go off the board in the 5th and 7th round for the Blues. We'll talk about them together, as the Hawaii Blues fan kind of alluded to. 2 guys that apparently there's some people that are high on and think that could realistically make, the Blues someday. We're talking about 5th round pick Matthew Kessel, no relation to Phil, by the way. Don't know if he likes hot dogs as much as Phil either, but we'll find that out later. He went to UMass, and then Noah Beck in the 7th round from the U.S. Hockey League. And both of these guys are very similar. In fact, I'm just going to read Gabriel's assessment on Noah Beck because it's pretty much almost carbon copy of each other. He says, and he leads off here, quote, Am I being punked? There's no way the Blues dove for this explicit case of deja vu, right? Well, let's break down Noah Beck. He's an overage defenseman who was passed up entirely in the 2019 draft. While promising, his USHL career left a lot to be desired. He's now moving to the NCAA, where he'll look to round out the weekends of his play. Beck was again entirely unranked, giving off an impression he wouldn't become the focus of any NHL team until he joined the class of college free agents in 2 to 3 years. Sound familiar? It should. This is another Matt Kessel. The two are even the same height, both standing at 6'3". I was blown away by this pick when St. Louis made it. While I won't say there were better options, I mean, it was the 7th round, it still feels so peculiar to have two players that are so familiar. So what do you think about Kessel and Beck, Wags?
I'm right there with Foley. It's the okay. So you basically drafted two guys that weren't drafted last year and still weren't ranked, had disappointing USHL careers, and now are in college. Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll be seasoned and know exactly what they want to do to progress. But basically using two picks on guys that teams passed on last year, I'm a little, I'm a little down on that.
Yeah. And then, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, they seem like total lottery picks. You know, they had down years. They've got some issues to work out. Maybe they find it, but it's just like, again, we're at the point of we're at lottery pick point here for, lottery tickets rather for this part of the draft. And then the final pick, actually the second to last pick, but we're going out of order here. In the 6th round, the Blues took a goalie in Will Cranley. Played in the OHL, played 21 games, had 18 wins. 18 out of 21's pretty good. Only had an .894 save percentage. He played on an Ottawa 67s team that was just ungodly good this year. They won the OHL's first place spot in the playoffs by 9 points over the next place team. Really, the goaltending wasn't the focus for the 67s this year. Cranley was the backup. He stands 6'4" as an 18-year-old. He's the backup. And the team's actual starter, Cedric Andre, put up much better numbers in more games and went undrafted. But Gabriel Foley says it's clear what the Blues see in Cranley. He's massive. It's a size that is shared by some of the Blues' greatest goalie picks, like Ben Bishop, for instance, who was picked by Larry Plow in 2005. Jordan Binnington, 6'2", and then he notes the Joel Hofer, who is 6'3" and was the darling of last year's World Juniors for Team Canada, a guy that the organization and a lot of Blues fans are very high on. So this is kind of a guy that maybe he turns out, maybe he doesn't. I don't think he has too much pressure to turn out on him because there's still some talent ahead of him on the ladder, like an Evan Fitzpatrick, a Joel Hofer, Husso, Gillies, and then of course Binnington at the top. But this is the team, I want to give the Blues the benefit of the doubt here because the Blues have been able to do a really good job in drafting goalies, over the past, 20 years or so. I mean, they were able to find Jake Allen. They found, they were high on Brent Johnson. There was a pretty good stable of goalies. It felt like for a while with Jake Allen. I remember when Jake Allen was considered like the number 4 goalie in the organization behind Ben Bishop. And then, of course, they went out and found Brian Elliott, who was kind of a cast-off. They saw something in him, and he turned out great. I give the Blues a lot of benefit of the doubt when it comes to the goalies here, and Will Cranley seems interesting, but, again, he wasn't even the starter on his OHL team. So it's just kind of like I'm hopeful, but it's just like, who knows with this guy, right?
Well, and you almost have to sit there and think that you almost have to pick a goalie every year because goalies are such crapshoots in a sense. You just don't know what you're going to get out of these goaltenders. And like you said, the Blues have been lucky in a sense that they've been able to hit gold a couple of different times here. And, Joel Hofer is a guy, like you said, that wowed in the Canadian team, and you're hoping that continues to progress and get better. Ville Husso was a guy that was very good for a few years down in the AHL, and he was the next guy, and then Binnington overtook him, and you got that. Evan Fitzpatrick's a guy that should have been the next guy up, and I highly doubt he ever sees the NHL as a Blue. I really do. And that's not saying he's a bad goaltender, but he's just not going to get that chance. I think that chance has passed him by. But we also said the same thing about Binnington. So you never know. I just think that, yeah, you almost have to at least every other year probably go with a goaltender. And because what you have picked recently has worked, you're going to stick to the status quo. And once again, it just goes back to they're probably trying to make the safe picks and going with what they know before moving into next year in the scouting department, whoever leads that, making those kind of out-of-the-box picks. I mean, we saw the same sort of thing when Kekalainen left as well. Seemed like the draft after that, the Blues kind of went safe. Yeah. And this is the same sort of situation with Armstrong. So it's not surprising. The thing that was surprising to me is the fact that they didn't focus more on forward positions. They did draft 3 defensemen, and that was a little interesting to me. I thought they were going to go at least forward heavy.
And when they did go forward, they went with, grinder types, except for this Dickinson character. You would have thought that, the one thing that the Blues seem to be lacking, in their prospect pool is high-end offensive talent at this point, because Kyrou is, if he's not on the NHL roster, something's wrong. Costin's not going to be too far from him, and then there's a big drop-off from there. I mean, you still have, Toropchenko, who looked really good in juniors, but he's been kind of slow to get going, in the minors. Same thing with Abramov, a couple others. But it's just like you would have thought that Armstrong would have gone for those, high end, maybe a little bit of even high risk, offensive talents. And Neighbors could be a point producer, but it's just that's not going to be the main focus of his game. Same thing with Peterson, in the third round. But time will tell. I mean, we it's hard to really judge a draft at this point, just days after it's done, unless you're drafting like in the top 10. After like the top 15 or so, you're getting into players that have one issue or another. It's just the way it is. So,
and guys that also aren't going to see the ice for at least a year or two. I mean, the top 10, 15 are guys that potentially could crack the starting lineup. Outside of that, everybody else is developmental. That's why it's the entry draft. It's developmental guys that are going to go to college or through, the USHL or OHL or what have you. It's developmental. So you can't judge it for at least 2 years.
Exactly. But I will say I didn't hate the draft. I didn't hate what the Blues did in the draft. I mean, I guess I'm kind of neutral on it. I mean, I like the Neighbors pick more than others just because, I think he just has that potential to be a fan favorite, but time will tell on that. So, want to just a couple of housekeeping notes here before we go here. First of all, we mentioned last week we're taking an off-season break. That's not going to be the case. We will continue through the off-season. Our episodes might be a little bit shorter, because there's not as much going on, but we might be dipping into some fun historical stuff here. We'll have an announcement for you starting with the next episode. We'll probably even have some more, Blues news to talk about next episode as well, because, free agency is still very young. There's still some decent players out there, and I think there's still some moves to be made. So look for some more, current Blues roster analysis, but maybe we dip into our off-season content. We're also working on kind of an idea for season 2. We've got some, changes coming along that we'll tell you about just as in terms of the entire hockey podcast network. We can't say anything at the moment, but it's going to be interesting, going into season 2 and beyond. And we've gotten a fun concept that we need to work out here. Maybe the next episode we'll be able to put out the proverbial bat signal for you and others to participate in it. But we still need to work it out, behind the scenes. So a lot of fun things coming up. I'm going to have another Bluenotes question of the week here coming up after we hop off here. And this week we have some shirts now available in the Bluenotes Teespring store. And this week I think we'll make it a shirt that you win. We've given away, a few masks and a gator, but I think you'll really like our shirts. And spoiler alert, Wags, you're getting one in a couple of days.
Woohoo!
So,
yes.
So next week, Wags will begin his Price is Right modeling career, hopefully by wearing one of our new Bluenote shirts. we'll take a look. We're trying to drive, as we talked about last week, Wags, we're trying to drive female engagement into this podcast. So we are going to have you as a model next week.
Wait, you're trying to drive female engagement and you're using me as a model. Yes, we'll go with that.
Yeah, it may not work. It's an idea. We're going to play around with it. We'll see how it works. So
I am single, so the more female involvement, the better.
You hear that, ladies? He's single. Okay, he made that very clear. So just we're on Twitter at Bluenotes Pod, Facebook at Bluenotes Pod. Our email is bluenotespod@gmail.com. Send us any inquiries you like. So, in the meantime, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Wags, any final thoughts?
I feel better than I did on Friday, and I'm looking forward to season 2 because it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
I think it will be. It absolutely will be. And we'll actually have, and of course, not to mention, we'll have hockey to talk about. Actual on-ice hockey. It does feel like a while since the Blues were eliminated from the playoffs. It feels like it's been way too long. It
has. That the whole break and then the bubble and now the break again. I don't know if I could do that again.
Yeah, no, I can't either. They're talking about, I think the early leader is January 1st for the beginning of the year. That sounds like it might be the Winter Classic. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they pushed that off a year just because they want to get fans.
Oh yeah,
in those stands. So we'll see what happens there. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for listening because without you, there is no me, there is no Wags, there is no Hawaii Blues fan, and there is no Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you as always to not be a chump and always play to the whistle. You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.